Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Ahsoka Episode 5 video. There are a whole bunch of Star Wars Easter eggs and references, so we'll break it all down. I know you have tons of questions about what was going on with Anakin Skywalker. Was he a Force ghost? Is he a Mortis god now? Don't worry, we'll explain all that. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. We're doing a giveaway for Disney Plus memberships. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and just post your favorite moments from the episode on the video. So careful for spoilers if you haven't seen the episode yet. We'll just start at the beginning and work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs, WTF moments, what's really going on with Anakin Skywalker.
This is where the fun begins.
Interesting.
Starting with the title, Shadow Warrior, which is a super deep-cut reference to a samurai film by Akira Kurosawa called Kagemusha. The name literally translates to Shadow Warrior. George Lucas was also credited as one of the executive producers on that movie. Most of Akira Kurosawa's other samurai films are all amazing, but they heavily influenced George Lucas when he was making the original trilogy.
It's hard to really appreciate the true genius of Kurosawa, I think, until you've seen a few of the films and then you've been able to see other films at the same time and be able to realize his visual style. My favorite of all time is really Seven Samurai.
The original movie was about a thief who is hired to impersonate a dying warlord, and when he dies, the thief just continues in the role, but eventually is tested when he is forced to lead a bunch of troops into battle with the thought that he might get a ton of people killed. So in the context of this episode, Ahsoka is the Shadow Warrior, and Anakin is the dying warlord, dying Jedi she is replacing, and he's testing her commitment and her getting used to the idea that she'll be leading people into battle who might wind up getting killed, like Sabine Wren, her new Padawan. Just in general, the entire Ahsoka series is meant to feel like a very samurai film type of vibe, kind of like her episode of The Mandalorian Season 2. That's why a lot of the soundtrack of the Ahsoka series sounds kind of like the Star Wars version of a samurai film. One of his big lessons to Ahsoka is that she is his legacy. She's a Shadow Warrior just like him, meaning that there is this twinge of darkness within them, but they themselves are good people. Like there's more to them than just being this darkness. They had a couple funny moments about that during the episode where he was basically telling her, like, okay, I get you're probably pissed off about all the Darth Vader stuff, but there's more to me than just the Darth Vader of it all.
Far more, Anakin. But more powerful and dangerous than anyone realized.
Is that what this is about?
The actual opening scene starts with Hera, Jacen, and Chopper down on the Henge in the Waypoint investigating what happened during Ahsoka's battle with Baylan Skoll and what happened to Sabine. They zoom and enhance on the broken pieces of the map, which is meant to foreshadow how Ahsoka and the others will get to the other galaxy, and how she uses her abilities in the Force to sense what happened after she fell off the cliff. Very convenient, sort of like a Jedi instant replay ability. One of my theories is they would use the space whales to get the other galaxy, but I wasn't quite sure how they were going to accomplish it. They basically went full Pinocchio, full Jonas, if you want to make Bible references. Literally fly into the mouth of the whale and it will just carry you there, kind of like Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon flying into the space slug. They find Huyang, who discovered what happened earlier holding Sabine's Mandalorian helmet. Jacen, who is strong in the Force, if it wasn't clear, they kind of implied that during Star Wars Rebels, senses what's happening to Ahsoka though, even though he doesn't totally understand exactly what's happening. That's why you can see him pause and look out beyond the cliff, like you kind of get what's going on instantly, like, oh, he realizes kind of that she's there, but she's not there at the same time. Then we finally go back to Ahsoka and Anakin Skywalker's reunion in the World Between Worlds in the exact moment after Episode 4 ended. Anakin gets in a couple good jokes about her getting really old and him looking the exact same that he did during the Clone Wars, and her losing her fight with Baylan Skoll, losing hard, like, oh yeah, you definitely lost, big time. The important thing here, though, is that he knows everything that happened to Ahsoka, and he knows what's going on with Baylan Skoll, which kind of clarifies exactly how he exists here. Like, what's going on? Is he a Force ghost? Is he a Mortis god? Is it the real Anakin from the Clone Wars? What's going on? So many questions about this. You could do like 10 different videos just explaining how this works.
Tell me what's going on.
I'm here to finish your training.
What I think is actually going on here is that because this Anakin has knowledge of everything that happens when he becomes Darth Vader and after he died, this is meant to be a present-day Anakin Skywalker who's already been through all those events. He already died, but he's not exactly a Force ghost, so I think he's closer to being like the Mortis gods, but he hasn't like completely replaced the Mortis gods or anything like that. I am sure Dave Filoni is going to get tons and tons of questions about this every time he goes to a convention from now to the end of time. But if he were just a regular Force ghost, he would have that same kind of blue outline that all the Force ghosts that you see in the Star Wars movies had. They would have made him look like that if it was just a simple Force ghost, which he is not. That's why I think that he's something a little bit more powerful than the Force ghosts themselves. There were a lot of people that thought that he replaced one of the Mortis gods, like maybe he became the son or the daughter or the father, replaced one of them basically, but that's not exactly what happened. Like Ahsoka didn't replace the daughter or anything like that. He basically explains that Ahsoka can still return to the world of the living, and when he says that's because she remembers what happened to her, and that's good that she remembers, it's a reference to the way that Force ghosts work in the Star Wars universe. Basically, he's saying that she died and she can go back to the world of the living. So they're kind of referencing just the way that dying works in the Star Wars universe, the way that Force ghosts work.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Pretty much everyone, every living being in the Star Wars universe, even very powerful Jedi Masters like Yoda, people like Anakin Skywalker, down to normal people like just regular old people, when they die, their essence just becomes one with the Force. The difference is that Jedi who are trained in how to become Force ghosts can retain their consciousness after they die, like their sense of self. Those are what Force ghosts are, basically the essence of people who used to be alive but just retain their consciousness. The other thing, too, is that Force Ghosts can also influence the world of the living, too, like Force Ghost Yoda is able to call down the lightning strike. So Anakin is basically telling Ahsoka that even though she kind of died, she retained the knowledge of who she is, her consciousness, there's still a chance that she can return back to her body in the world of the living. This is actually pretty close to the way they explain resurrection in the Marvel Moon Knight series. In order to resurrect, the rule is that your body has to be whole, or you can transplant your consciousness into another body if it's a dead body or the person's will that you're replacing is just weaker than your own will. But Anakin claims that Ahsoka has come to the world between worlds to see him with the purpose of finishing her training. So I think that answers the question of how Ahsoka was pulled into the world between worlds. Anakin is the one that did that. I didn't see any owls flying around or hooting anywhere. You can let me know if you saw any, so I don't think there was any references to Mirai. Usually when Ahsoka shows up in scenes, Mirai is somewhere in the background. During Star Wars Rebels, when Ezra was able to enter the world between worlds, it was implied that the Mortis gods were the reason why he was able to enter. They helped him enter. So that's why I think a lot of people are thinking that this version of Anakin, after he died, sort of ascended to a Mortis god kind of like position guarding the world between worlds, which is possible. That would also explain why he's not showing up as a Force ghost in all the events of the sequel movies, like he's too busy guarding the world between worlds to just show up and talk to everybody in the world of the living all the time. Rian Johnson said that he briefly considered having Force Ghost Anakin show up during The Last Jedi, but because Luke Skywalker had such a bigger relationship with Yoda during the previous Star Wars movies, they wanted it to be Yoda instead. But Ahsoka's whole arc in this episode is a very Gandalf, Lord of the Rings kind of arc. It's a huge deep-cut Easter egg for something Dave Filoni also said a long time ago. She's going basically from being Gandalf the Grey, like Ahsoka the Grey, to Gandalf the White, Ahsoka the White, which is why she goes from gray robes in the episode to white robes later at the end of the episode. Star Wars Rebels fans will also remember that she was wearing the white robes at the end of the animated series, and even though they did that scene in live action with her wearing different colored clothing, I think Dave Filoni's idea when he did that animated episode is that Ahsoka had already been through this experience and become Ahsoka the White, so to speak. Some of you might remember this. Dave Filoni made a drawing comparing Ahsoka to Gandalf back when Rise of Skywalker came out, answering this fan question of whether or not she was alive during the events of the sequel trilogy, because there was that scene where all the voices of the Jedi were calling out to Rey when she was fighting Emperor Palpatine. So people were like, wait a minute, these are all dead Jedi. Does that mean that Ahsoka's dead too? Dave Filoni's only answer to this was just to post this picture, and it was a joke where Gandalf was talking to Ahsoka saying people thought that I was dead too, implying that Ahsoka was still alive during the events of the sequels. But I think he was making the Gandalf joke because, yes, the idea is that she did kind of die, but then came back to life just like Gandalf did in the Lord of the Rings movies. During the events of the episode, we're just actually seeing that happen. You notice when he activates his lightsaber, it is Anakin's lightsaber, not Darth Vader's. A lot of people were confused about this because when we saw him at the end of episode 4, the lighting was so dark, it was kind of hard to make things out. He makes a Darth Vader reference, though, saying he's heard someone say, "I won't fight you anymore." That was what Luke Skywalker told him during Return of the Jedi.
I won't fight you.
I've heard that before.
I will not fight you, Father.
You are unwise to lower your defenses.
So this confirms that this version of Anakin isn't necessarily a Force ghost, but he might be kind of like a Mortis god or so after he died. Like he remembers everything that happened during the original trilogy and after his death. This also helps them avoid the problem of what would Anakin do if he was pulled from the past with all this foreknowledge of what would happen in the future and becoming Darth Vader. So this is a version of Anakin from much later in his own timeline. This also explains why he can appear in any form that he wants, so he can look younger and he can use multiple different kinds of lightsabers, like he uses his original lightsaber, but then during their last fight, he switches to the red blade. Back on Seatos at the Henge, when Hera and Hu Yang are still trying to figure out what happened, you notice in the background, like zoom in and enhance, how Jacen is just staring out over the cliff with Chopper. That's because he is continuing to sense Ahsoka in the world between worlds. Takes a little while, but eventually he convinces Hera, oh no, I feel her out there, and she starts to listen to it too.
Don't you hear it?
The waves crashing?
No. The lightsabers.
Jacen starts getting a little more detailed on what it is that he's sensing. He actually hears Anakin and Ahsoka's lightsaber fights out over the waves. Hera starts to hear it too, and the reason why she can do that is because of the whole Sabine Wren explainer for how the Force is supposed to work now. The whole idea is that everybody has the Force. Everyone in the universe has the Force, but only some people are deeply connected to it. So people like Hera and Sabine who don't have a strong connection to the Force naturally or like natural ability, the way that Jacen and Ahsoka have to try way harder. But eventually, like if someone listened hard enough, they could also sense those lightsabers clashing over the waves too. But obviously all these Jacen scenes, and even later in the episode too, are to tease that they're eventually going to train him in the Force. Like maybe Ezra will do it at some point. I think that's probably why Hu Yang kept telling him that he wouldn't do it, because someone else will do it, and it won't be Ahsoka. So Ezra will be like the next best person. Carson Teva also makes a big Princess Leia reference, claiming Leia is covering for them while their squad of X-Wings went rogue at Seatos against the will of the Senate. Leia during this time period would look kind of like this. This would be after she left Luke Skywalker's training to give birth to Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, but before she took him to Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy to be trained. A lot of people asking what happened with Leia during the events of The Mandalorian during this part of the timeline. We saw Luke Skywalker a couple times. Makes sense that they'd eventually start referencing Leia at some point. Right now, during the events of this series, she's really active in the New Republic. We get a very short but really cool badass lightsaber fight between Ahsoka and Anakin. You notice that his technique is just like it was during the events of the prequels, but because Ahsoka's skill has gotten so much better, she's gotten older, she's actually able to get a hit in on him. Then because he's so much more powerful now in the form that he exists, he's able to smash the walkway in the world between worlds, sending her into this other past history of hers, which is kind of like a combination of the past, but also he's manipulating it a little bit. A lot of people are also going to have questions about this too, like because this is the world between worlds, it's connected to all points in time and space, like everything everywhere all at once, to make another joke. Does this mean that she actually traveled literally into the past, or is it more like a Force vision? My assumption right now, just based on what they showed us, is this kind of a combination of the two things. Like Anakin, in his current form, is able to change things like you would in a Force vision, but he's also drawing upon real things that happened in the past because of the way the world between worlds works. But this is why when she wakes up, she's a child. There are all these clone troopers around them. They're in the middle of the Clone Wars. She's only got her one green lightsaber. I couldn't find out who's playing the younger version of Ahsoka. I didn't see her name in the credits, so if you did spot it, just write it below in the comments. Anakin looks exactly like he did during the Clone Wars, though, the exact same armor. Ahsoka's wearing her Padawan braid. When she says this was one of their first missions, she's talking about the events of the Clone Wars movie, which was the very beginning of the Clone Wars series. This was the first mission that they went on together after she had been assigned to become Anakin's Padawan.
And who are you supposed to be?
I'm Ahsoka. Master Yoda sent me.
She runs through the smoke and the shadows. The battle has ended and there are tons of casualties. The whole idea is that during this battle, during the Clone Wars, it was meant to be Anakin's first solo command experience, and a ton of the clone troopers died, like a bunch of people. But you have to remember that this Ahsoka is the older Ahsoka, just in the younger Ahsoka's body, so she's grown way closer to the clones over that period, so that's why she's mourning them so much harder during this scene. The lesson that the younger version of Anakin is trying to teach Ahsoka during this event is that there's always a price to be paid. You're always going to wind up having people who follow you die, and even though that sucks, it's just something that you need to deal with. The whole idea in present day is that Ahsoka's big problem is that she keeps trying to avoid getting close to people, pushing them away, hoping that she won't get them killed too, and that's why she left Sabine before her training was complete, before the events of the series pick up. Sabine incorrectly thinks that Ahsoka left her because she hated her and didn't want to be her master, but really, Ahsoka didn't want to get Sabine killed. So the younger Anakin is trying to remind younger Ahsoka, even though it's older Ahsoka, that she's not supposed to be perfect. She's going to make mistakes. People are going to die, but that's okay. In order to live, she's going to have to fight. She can't quit this battle because of what's happening with Thrawn in present day. So Anakin is using her first battle as a metaphor for what's going to be happening with this upcoming war, this upcoming Star War that she'll be fighting against Thrawn. We go back to the world of the living with Hera and everyone else looking for Ahsoka off the coast, and while she's talking about chasing ghosts, they have a picture of live-action Kanan Jarrus on her dashboard way more prominently this time too. This is meant to be Freddie Prinze Jr., who filmed a new scene for this picture here because he claimed before that he was never going to do a live-action Kanan cameo scene, but turns out he already kind of did. The special reference here just feels like Dave Filoni teasing us that we might get an actual Kanan scene at some point. I don't know, maybe a flashback or a Force Ghost, somehow them invoking live-action Kanan. There's also a bit of a funny moment with Hu Yang trying to explain Anakin Skywalker to Hera. Like, oh, he was intense. That was his way of kind of explaining the Darth Vader of it all. Like, oh yeah, he got really, really intense. During this scene, they also have a couple of funny moments with Chopper, and he's got like this through the entire episode. Anytime you hear Chopper talking on the comms, it always sounds like he's swearing up a storm, just making fun of people, like cursing like a sailor. There have been a lot of jokes about R2-D2 doing the same thing in the past, like what he's really beeping there is just a bunch of curse words. Speaking of Anakin Skywalker, though, there's like a hilarious deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith where Anakin Skywalker speaks in R2-D2's droid language. Like he makes a bunch of beeps trying to speak like R2. It's ridiculous.
It's broken. Can you understand what he's saying?
I'm not a protocol droid.
I'm pretty sure that beep is down.
I sense Count Dooku is above us.
Oh, yes, you're right. Beep is up. I think.
That wasn't him being funny either. That was like a real scene that George Lucas had him film for the movie seriously, like it wasn't meant to be tongue-in-cheek. Now you understand why they probably cut that during the final edit. The next period that Ahsoka winds up traveling to is during the end of the Clone Wars Season 7, during the final siege of Mandalore. So if you watch the final Clone Wars episodes, this is basically the live-action version of that. She led her own squad of clone troopers against Darth Maul and his Maul DeLoreans. That's why the clone troopers' helmets are painted orange to pay homage to her orange skin, and you see the Maul DeLoreans with their horns on the helmets. This took place long before the events of Star Wars Rebels, but Bo-Katan also fought with her here. They know each other well. If you remember, during The Mandalorian Season 2, she's the person who told Mando where to find Ahsoka. We get a very quick voiceover cameo from Tamora Morrison, who's playing Rex. A lot of people also wondering if we would see a Rex cameo during Ahsoka. I'm assuming this is probably going to be it, but maybe if they do a Season 2, we'll see a live-action Rex in present day, like an older version of Rex. When the older present-day Anakin says he doesn't know this battle, it's because this was happening during the events of Revenge of the Sith, and Anakin was back on Coruscant with Obi-Wan Kenobi, like it was happening as the beginning of Revenge of the Sith was taking place. The last time Anakin and Ahsoka actually met before their big reunion fight during Star Wars Rebels, way later when he became Darth Vader, was right before Ahsoka left to go on this particular mission. When she was returning through hyperspace to Coruscant, that's when Order 66 actually went down, so it kind of gives you an idea for the timeline of when all this stuff was happening. Then Anakin basically tells Ahsoka that he'll be with her forever, metaphorically and literally, because, he can also become a Force ghost, but his teachings will live on in her. She's his legacy, one of his legacies at least, like he has a legacy of death and destruction because he was Darth Vader. And basically Ahsoka has to carry all that with her, and she'll pass on some of that to Sabine, her student, in the same way that she was Anakin's student, but she doesn't have to be trapped by all the bad history that comes with that, like the legacy of Darth Vader. Like it doesn't have to be all about the death and destruction. This time he confronts her again, but notice that his eyes have changed to Sith yellow like they were at the end of Revenge of the Sith. He still has his original lightsaber from Revenge of the Sith, but the Kyber crystal is bleeding red now. This is a bit of a change, like obviously this is just Anakin messing with Ahsoka, trying to teach her this lesson. His red lightsaber actually was something that he built long after the events of Revenge of the Sith, because Obi-Wan Kenobi took his blue lightsaber and eventually gave it to Luke Skywalker. Really cool transition here when he kicks her out of the past into the present of the world between worlds. You can hear Darth Vader's breathing sounds as he walks through the smoke, and his red lightsaber as it flashes between images of Darth Vader and Anakin again. That's where the title comes from, the Shadow Warrior, basically. She's able to defeat him, spares his life, but that was kind of what he was looking for, like he was hoping that she would do that and choose life. Remember, this is Anakin trying to test her. Basically, it's her having her call to action, so to speak, like this is her innermost cave scene, kind of like Luke's cave scene on Dagobah, only hers is happening in the world between worlds. She comes out of it with renewed resolve in her fight against Thrawn, like she won't give up in her quest to stop Thrawn. Anakin's eyes and his face turn back to normal, he congratulates her, and then disappears into nothingness. So I know a lot of people will be like, what happened to him? Where did he go? Like I said, I don't think he's meant to be a Force ghost in the traditional sense. I think he's something a little bit more powerful than that. So essentially, he can do anything he wants to in the world between worlds, but he operates a little bit like a Mortis god, Force ghost kind of situation. So even though visibly he's disappeared, technically he's still all over the place all around watching Ahsoka. But I also think that he is the person who pushed her back into the world of the living, and he's the person that pulled her into the world between worlds. Like, I think Anakin was behind all of this. Like I said, Dave Filoni will probably clarify this at some point. Maybe he won't. Like, maybe he'll just mess with people for the rest of time. Either way, Anakin seems like he's a little bit more powerful than Force Ghost Yoda or Qui-Gon Jinn or Obi-Wan Kenobi, basically like all the Force Ghosts that we've seen before. Probably because of his connection to the Force, like he was literally a child of the Force, the chosen one. Her consciousness travels back into her body, they pull it out of the ocean, and she changes into her Gandalf the White robes. Like I said, turning from Gandalf the Grey into Gandalf the White, Ahsoka the Grey turns into Ahsoka the White. Notice again that Jacen also senses her in the Force when they get closer. That's why he knows that they found her and she's still alive before he actually sees her body. The other interesting thing here too is when we see her in her bed here, she doesn't have her headdress on. I think this is the first time we've seen Rosario Dawson's live-action Ahsoka without anything on her head. She then helps them figure out what really happened to Sabine by using her Jedi ability to sense what happened in the past around this area. Instant replay, like I said. They make a couple more references about Jacen being really strong in the Force, and Hu Yang makes a couple more references about the Clone Wars. Like, that's what he means when he says, I'm not going to train you. Like, it's probably going to be Ezra that'll wind up training him, but also he knows how to build a lightsaber because that's literally his function. He was created to help Jedi build their lightsabers since the Old Republic era, so he knows every known Jedi's lightsaber design going back many thousands of years.
Many years I have been on this ship, teaching many a Jedi before you, and I will continue teaching many a Jedi after you. Call me what you want, but inside my memory banks, I contain a record of every lightsaber ever made, and the Jedi who fashioned them.
There were a couple references to that in earlier episodes where he was searching through his databanks to find Shin Hati and Baylan Skoll's lightsaber, but the reason why he couldn't find Shin Hati's is because it was built after the fall of the Jedi Order, so he wouldn't have it in his databanks. The New Republic shows up to basically arrest everyone because they suck, apparently in present day. Hera is basically going to lose her command, but because we know Thrawn is coming back, even if she does lose her command, eventually they'll probably give it back to her like, oh, you know what? You were probably right about Thrawn coming back with that giant space fleet. And Ahsoka basically uses the space whales, the Purgles, to help take her to the other galaxy. A lot of us had theories about this, but not exactly sure how it was going to play out. The scene of her communicating with them is a lot like the Star Wars Rebels episodes when they flew with them, but this pod is much bigger than before. She speaks with one of the larger ones just because it would be one of the leaders of their pod, and they're kind of like the dragons on Game of Thrones. The older they get, the bigger they get. Carson Teva keeps the New Republic at bay to prevent the Purgles from getting spooked and taking off, and then Jacen references the events of the Star Wars Rebels ending and how they use them to get rid of Thrawn. The whole idea is that Ezra befriended the Purgles earlier on the series, and they did him a solid by basically taking Thrawn's 7th Fleet to the other galaxy. Ezra just happened to be on board one of Thrawn's ships when that happened. The other joke here, too, is that he slips in a far, far away reference. So the joke we make is they were taken to a galaxy far, far away, like all the Star Wars opening title crawls. And basically, Ahsoka talks to the Purgle through the Force and goes full Pinocchio, riding inside its belly to the other galaxy. They made the effect of them traveling into hyperspace the same it was during the animated series. The only other thing of note here during this ending scene is that Captain Jarrod here with the New Republic is like a brand new character. There were some Jarrods during the Old Republic game, but I don't know if that's meant to be canon to the actual live-action Star Wars stuff. Most of Episode 6 next week, early prediction, will probably be them in the other galaxy. We might get our first look at Thrawn, maybe Ezra Bridger, but I think the last 2 episodes for sure, like Episodes 7 and 8, will all be that other galaxy with them figuring out how to come back and then actually coming back. There's still a ton of questions like what else is going on with the other important people in the galaxy, what are they going to do when Thrawn comes back, and what's the deal with this other galaxy, like what does it actually look like in this other galaxy? Overall, it was a pretty solid episode, but there were a ton of Easter eggs and references. If you spotted any during the episode that I didn't talk about during the video, just write them below in the comments. In my Episode 6 trailer video, we'll post tomorrow, so be sure to enable orders for my channel so you don't miss that. There's a bunch of big stuff coming up too. Click here for that video. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here for all my other Star Wars Ahsoka episodes. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.